All right, guys, we're trying something new tonight. We're going to do this with a bunch of our favorite podcasters. And first and foremost is Justin Rimmel from Mysterious Circumstances. We hadn't done anything since probably Detroit last year at the live event. That was August, so it's
Yeah.
been a year.
Yeah, I want to say
Crazy.
so. That's probably the last time I've really seen you guys. And hell, I don't think we've even done too many episodes like together as a whole or anything. But yeah, it's crazy to think it's been like a year already.
Yeah, it is. It has been crazy. So what we're going to do, just so people are aware, this is going to be like a little bonus situation to where both of the shows that are involved can play this on their shows, just as like bonus episodes, I guess, depending on how they want to do it. So that's what we're going to do. What we're going to try to do, and it'll differ from show to show, but I know we're going to in tonight's episode, Justin has worked up a 10-15 minute story for us, and you did, right?
Hmm.
Okay, just
Yes.
making sure.
Yes.
You had that look like, did I? And then we're going to do about a 15-minute story. So it's almost going to be like we're both doing a miniature version of our podcast. But then when Justin gets finished with his story, we'll discuss it a little bit. Then we'll do our story and then we'll discuss that a little bit. So it'll be completely equal, should be. And we've got some big guests coming up. We're going to be doing this with Ohio. We're going to do it with Tim Dennis from Darkness Radio. We're going to be doing it with Diana Kelly from History Goes Bump, and I've got 3 or 4 others lined up. So should be a blast. So Justin, we'll let you start, and we'll keep from interrupting you while you tell your story.
No, you're totally fine. I
I
had to
forgot you're a
choose
professional.
carefully. I try to be. I don't know how much of one I am, but I chose this one carefully because I didn't want to make Tracy cry and choose like something too extreme. So
Thank you, Justin.
you are welcome. I thought about that.
Thank you.
So I guess today my whole part of the story is I'm going to talk about the witch's castle in Utica, Indiana.
Nice.
So I'm not. I checked your guys' feed to see if you had done anything on it.
Mm-mm.
I did not see anything on it, so I was like, well, all right, it's free game.
I think we might have covered it in a short years ago.
Okay.
Not enough for anybody to remember, or not enough to ruin the story because, like I said, it's we used to live not too far from Utica. I've been to Utica
Mm-hmm.
for some weddings and stuff. There's a really nice wedding venue in Utica, and
Is it?
so we've been over there for some stuff. But I've never been by the witch house.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty much roped off and private property at this point, and unless you have like specific permission, you're probably gonna get, a trespassing charge, which it's probably a ticket or something like a fine.
Mhm.
But I mean, cops do regularly patrol there,
It's
and
Indiana. You're going
specifically
to get shot.
because I mean, there's a possibility, But yeah, so Witch's Castle, which it is known as, is right on the Ohio River. And all it is now is just kind of like skeleton of a burnt home. A lot of teenagers will go out there, drink, do some drugs, have some sex, do whatever else. So, like I had mentioned, locally it's known as the Witch's Castle. And there's a rumor about how it became known as the Witch's Castle, and the legend has it that 3 witches were the founders of the town of Utica. And after years of tormenting the townspeople, the witches were killed by the townspeople, and then the land was cursed because of it. So that's unfortunately like a short snippet of the legend. Okay, so the river, uh, it's a little port town. It's located on the bank. It's a small cove, and it's the Falls of the Ohio. And it was expected to be this really really busy city when they did find it, or when they founded it. Seemed like pretty sure thing. The guy who James Noble Wood, he was the first ferryman in the area as well. So he was founding it. He was working there with the Ohio River right there at that point in time. That's waterways and travel were very crucial. So despite all this hard work, the town never became more than just like a ferry crossing, because there was this more popular settlement of the city of Louisville, which was located right across the river. on the shores of Kentucky. So it kind of took all the steam away from Utica. And it really didn't make sense to the founder, because he just thought he had a sure thing. Like he had the location, natural resources, secure cove, nice shoreline. But apparently there was this whole bad aura surrounding the area, and it was driving all this potential businesses and all these people away. And it was because there were rumors that the town was cursed because Wood was suspected of stealing the land from three old sisters of Métis descent. The Métis are a people of mixed North Native American and Indo-European descent. So the word Métis is a French slang word which refers to a person as like a half breed or a mongrel. So calling somebody Métis back in the day was definitely not a good thing. But these girls were mixed, and that's what they called them. So the Jesuit Father Vivier in 1750 first introduced the derogatory term, and it was just illegal to, I guess, be a half breed by the common laws of God. So that's what they would say. And in the Treaty of Paris, the British seceded the Native American territory to the United States, and they didn't tell any of the native landowners, which these three sisters supposedly were. So Wood came in, claimed all the land and compensation for his his military service, and then he evicted the sisters out of the land altogether. And of course, according to the stories, they did not go easily. There was a standoff. So after days of gunfire and threats, Wood assembled a vigilante party and they stormed the house. The three sisters were disarmed, beaten, and physically dragged from their home. Some say they were just physically like kicking and screaming as they were getting dragged away. And then, after being securely tied up, they were thrown on a makeshift raft and sent down the river towards the falls of the Ohio, where they eventually died. The eyewitness reports are disturbing from the stories that we collected here. So they were bloody, beaten, trapped on the raft. Town folk recalled watching the sisters struggling and yelling helplessly. And then, without warning, apparently all of a sudden, all three sisters froze and their bodies became unnaturally stiff. And minutes passed, and they basically were just staring at the townspeople as they were floating down this river. And they really, after a few minutes, they didn't hear any more screaming or whatever. So they assumed that, they had passed away. But then apparently, um, they suddenly they heard the sisters or saw them moving again. They said, as if possessed, they all slowly lifted their heads in unison, glared at all of the vigilantes again, and they could see their eyes from the shoreline, which anybody who knows the Ohio River, I'm not sure how close that raft was to the shoreline. To see their eyes all wide open and everything like that from the size of the Ohio is a little bit unbelievable, but
Well, don't let a fact get into the way of a good story.
you know, exactly, dude. So then apparently their bodies started shaking and they started raving around, and that's when they started spewing all the curses, all the obscenities to all of the townspeople, and they cursed them and all of their descendants. And apparently, for
Wow.
over an hour, the townspeople watched the raft float further down the river. And the whole time, the sisters were cursing them and everything like that. And then supposedly, they went over the falls or whatnot. The falls were originally a series of rapids that caused the Ohio River to drop 26 feet over a distance of 2.5 miles. So that's what I'm referring to with the falls of the Ohio River.
Yeah, it's definitely not
Uh,
like Niagara Falls or something where you've got this giant
no,
drop. It's a gradual thing.
yeah, we're a flat land around here, there ain't much going on. But a lot of businesses were interested in setting up in Utica, and they just kind of they felt uneasy about supposedly what happened to the sisters. Um, the McAlpine Locks and Dam was constructed in 1830, though, and that's what pretty much devastated the whole town that was still struggling at that point, and it pretty much solidified the sisters' curse in the eyes of the townspeople. The bypass canal was built around the Falls of Ohio's directed water traffic away from Utica, and it essentially turned the town into a ghost town after that. So now, years after the construction of the dam, because this is a little separate story, years after the construction of the dam, another family of three sisters settled in Utica. They lived on the outskirts of town, and they had like a curious castle-like stone shack that was built on an isolated wooded hill overlooking the Ohio River. The town folk considered them unfriendly because the sisters rudely shunned all of their neighbors and made no attempt to interact with the community. And to be honest with you, they are just trying to mind their own business. I would have probably been the same way. And the sisters were said to be a little bit strange. They rarely ventured out during the day, and they preferred to go out to forage through the woods at night. And townspeople said they could see their, lanterns floating, through the trees whenever they were out there at night. Um, they had baskets filled with odd roots, geodes, and animal bones that were piled up on their front porch. And they said that the smells that would come from the chimney were just so ungodly horrible. And they also had no trespassing signs posted everywhere around the property. And it was also rumored that these sisters were witches, and the townspeople did their best to avoid them at all costs. That is until children started disappearing. So there were five children supposedly within a month's time that disappeared, and suspicion kind of turned their way. And when the townspeople went to raid their house, they found some crazy stuff going on, and they found what appeared to be human skins hanging on a makeshift clothesline across the back of the main room, and tossed in the corners were piles of small human bones, and stewing in the pot over the fireplace is what appeared to be a child's heart. So these three sisters were tried on the spot. They were found guilty of cannibalism and witchcraft, and they were hanged until dead, and their house was burned to the ground, literally on the spot.
Wow.
Haha, yeah. So that's a pretty interesting story. That's a story about the witch's castle. Now I'm gonna veer into the actual story of how all this went down, and I'm probably gonna break a lot of paranormal hearts who are into some of the weird stuff, because
No.
I did this episode at a live show in at the Boone County Jail Distillery. And
Oh,
there were so
cool.
many people, they were like, "Oh man, I'm so looking forward to seeing what paranormal story you got." And it's like, I'm gonna ruin your guys' day then, because because everybody has heard around that area, around southern Indiana, central Indiana, about the witch's castle, but they've never really heard the true story. So it wasn't actually a castle, it was just a home that was made of stone. In the 1940s, J. Paul Druin built a stone house, and it was a consecrated chapel at that property. He was a preacher who lived there, and the top room was used for Bible study. In the 1950s, it was owned by a guy named Joseph Biaggi, and the site was turned into a tourist home. And urban legend says the business was cursed and plagued with a multitude of problems, and an unexplained fire occurred. And that's when the place burned down to the ground and only left the stone shell. In reality, his stepson is the one who set the house on fire in a robbery gone wrong. Teenagers used to go there after it burned to drink and party. There were a lot of so-called witch and devil symbols. That's where those came from, is those kids out there partying, getting screwed up. And because they had heard all of these urban legends and everything like that, the people from Utica never called it the witch's castle. It has always been known as Mistletoe Falls. And in 1985, ownership eventually transferred to a woman named Darlene Roach. Now, there is one bad thing that happened there that is real, and that is the 1992 murder of Shonda Scherer.
Oh,
I'm not going to go into detail on that because it is explicitly brutal.
yeah.
And just so you know, all of her murderers are out of prison now. They were all
No
paroled.
way.
Oh yeah, yeah, I found that out.
Yeah, there was only
Yeah,
one that was left for the longest time, and she recently got out in like the last year and a half or so.
yep,
Wow.
yep. Which is, you know, it's super sad. But the woman who owned the site during that whole 92, 93 frenzy of the Scherer murder case, she ended up selling it in 1993 because of that, because
Oh,
there
I'm
was
sure.
just so much bad media attention and people were going out there. Today, the only thing that remains of the witch's castle is the foundation, the fireplace, one wall, and a filled in basement, all of which is covered in graffiti now. The chapel behind the house is pretty much intact. It still has even two windows, two doors, and a fireplace. Many paranormal investigators and sightseers to the castle have reported hearing and even recording audible voices and strange noises. Faces of children also have been seen peering out of the shack's windows. The most active sightings are of a young faceless girl around 8 or 9 years old with long black hair and wearing a white dress. And she is seen wandering aimlessly around the ruins and the woods. So,
Oh,
all of
man.
these different, well, it gets so better because like all of the different urban legends with different variations say that women believed to be witches used to live there before and were driven out and killed by townspeople. And there is 1000% no evidence of any case in history of Utica of this happening. That includes the first set of supposed witches and the second set of supposed witches. Still today, though, local police they do patrol the area. They're trying to prevent, you know, satanic rituals from
Yeah.
occurring on the site and stuff like that. Um, but most of the original falls have been flooded behind the McAlpine Dam. And one cool thing, though, is in 1990, a section of the area became the Falls of the Ohio State Park, and it contains 390 million year old fossil beds that are among the largest naturally exposed Devonian fossil beds in the world. So that is a
That is
pretty cool
cool.
fact.
Yeah.
So, other
Yeah.
than that,
Wow.
yeah, all those supposed witness accounts, all those stories, there's absolutely no evidence of happening. The damn thing was built in the 1940s. You know, it wasn't built by
Oh,
three sisters or anything like that.
oh
So,
my gosh. Well, I was totally sucked in there. I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Wow.
Well, you know, in the
so,
falls of the Ohio, if you go there when the water's down,
mhm.
Hmm.
man, it's so hard to believe. It's like being on a beach that's not sand, but it's like rock. And then
Yeah,
there's nothing but fossils everywhere. I mean, that's all you're seeing is fossils everywhere. So if anybody gets a chance to go check it out, especially with the if you can see it when the water's down, it's an amazing sight.
yeah, a lot of wood too. I've seen people down there collecting wood, like petrified wood
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
whatever they call driftwood or whatever. But
Hmm.
yeah, a lot of people I've seen down there doing that too.
So
Wow.
question.
Hmm.
Other than the Shandish Share case, which was
Hmm.
absolutely horrible happening there, what do you think would be the reason for the paranormal activity if nothing really bad has happened there?
Pareidolia. Honestly, if there is paranormal activity, which I've never seen, that's the crazy thing. Like I went searching for paranormal groups that have gone out there that had pictures, audio, everything. I really couldn't find anything out there. I think there was one piece of audio that I found from the area. Um, and it was from one like local group. So I'm not sure like who says all this paranormal activity has happened, but I think a lot of the activity that is said to happen is from locals who go out there and just possibly like I said, pareidolia, where they go out and they already have it worked up in their brains.
Right.
They believe the urban legends and they just don't know any better. So, their mind might play a little bit of tricks on them. But with the Shonda Scherer case, I mean, is it possible that, there is some paranormal activity? Absolutely. But I haven't found any like significant evidence of, groups going out there and providing like evidence.
Let's touch on the Shura case real quick, just for people
Mhm.
who might not be familiar with it, without it getting into
I got a few details
too many
if they want to
details.
hear
But
them.
the basics of it was, if I remember correctly, she was 13 years old. She had three so-called friends. One of them claimed she was hitting on her boyfriend or something. 13-year-old.
Mhm.
They pretty much abducted her, and they took her up there, and they did some gruesome torture things to her, including
Extremely gruesome.
extremely
Yeah.
gruesome, just things that you shouldn't do
Mhm.
to a human person.
Yeah.
And then they set her on fire basically while she was still
Yeah.
alive. And it was just such a horrible case. There's a lot of Dateline type specials and stuff out
Mhm.
there that if you
Oh,
want to
lots.
learn more about it. But
Lots of podcasts covered
yeah,
it. But
it's
the thing is though, she didn't even die at that location. She was set on fire and died elsewhere. She like the beginning of the first 3 hours of the torture was in Utica up at the witch's castle, but she was actually taken to a different remote place in Madison, Indiana, and that's when she was burned alive.
yeah,
So
it's
she
a
didn't
horrible
even die
case.
at the location, but it's one of the most horrible cases. And the fact those girls, I mean, one, two, three, four of them, all 12-year-old girls. I mean, I can't even
Mm-mm.
believe that they did that, and they're all out of prison now, which just
And I can't believe that.
fantastic.
I
Well,
cannot
the
Oh
believe
yeah.
one
that.
was one was older though. Was it the one that was driving?
I think she was
Like 16 or something like that.
yeah, she was 16. But yeah, there two of the girls got 60 years in prison. One was paroled after 26 years, and the other one was paroled after 25 years. And this happened in 92. Um, the one girl got 35 years in prison. She was paroled after 14. And the fourth girl got 20 years in prison, and she was paroled after 9. So they were all
That is
out of
effed up,
prison.
man.
Yeah,
That's
it's pretty
crazy.
screwed up. Yeah.
All right, Justin, we got a good story for you.
By God, I'm ready. Let's hear it.
You like a good poltergeist story, so
1000%. I do, of course.
I hope I got one you haven't heard about.
All right. I guess we'll see.
All right, so we're going to cover a poltergeist case from Baltimore, Maryland, and this was in 1960.
Hmm.
More specific, it was between January 14th and February 8th of 1960. So about a 3-week period. It not only terrorized the family, but it baffled public officials and the media. So the father of the family was a gentleman by the name of Edgar G. Jones. He was a retired fireman. He spent 37 years on the force. I was waiting for Tracy to chime in with "Thank you for your service." She
Oh,
did it. She
thank
did that
you for
one
your
time when we.
service.
She did
It's
that one time
fine.
we were talking about somebody in the Revolutionary War, and she's like, "Thank you for your service." Yeah, I don't think they're hearing that right now. So anyway, other members of the household was his wife, his daughter, and his son-in-law, and their 17-year-old son. His name's Ted. He'll be more. We'll get into names later, but he'll be more prominent. So I'll tell you his name now. The first incident actually happened during dinner one night. They're sitting around the big table like people would typically do in the 1960s. Everybody kind of ate dinner together back then. There wasn't everybody staring at their phones and stuff. And they're sitting there with this giant pitcher that had like milk or water or something in it. It explodes, and I mean that in the truest sense. It Glass flew everywhere. It was literally like there was a bomb inside of it. Well, as I said, glass flies everywhere. The family members were in complete shock. They're just sitting at the table like, what in the hell was that? Miss Jones, like a good wife, she ran to get a broom to clean up the mess. No sooner did she start to sweep all the broken glass up, another glass pitcher that was on the table exploded. And this was followed by a bunch of other objects that started just crashing to the floor from shelves, from the table, you name it. If it was sitting up on a table or something, it was started falling to the floor. The family was hysterical. So later that night, I guess I should say later that month, pictures started falling off the walls. They even had silverware come out of the drawers and start flying everywhere. Books would fly off a shelf, and even one came off the shelf and hurled out a window. Furniture was overturned. Chairs were thrown at people. And on another occasion, Edgar and his wife watched the sugar bowl on the table levitate in the air, turn over, dump all of the contents onto the table, and then the bowl fell to the table and shattered.
This guy's a jerk.
Sounds that way, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
This is one I've never heard in any poltergeist case.
But being a poltergeist case, I'm eager to find out who possibly is responsible for it, human being wise.
You technically already know because I made it a point.
Okay.
We'll get to it in a little later, though.
But there's always context. There's always context.
Right.
I'm eager for the context. Yeah.
Plants were ripped out of the planters. I've never heard of that before.
I'm mad at plants, man.
And then they would have soda bottles that would explode. Now, oddly, all of this had taken place during the daytime. It's not typically what you hear.
That is interesting.
That was going to change, though, on Sunday, January 17th. It's nighttime, and they have the first activity since all this started. And I promise I'm not making this up. Edgar tried to pick up a can of corn that had fallen off of the pantry shelf, and then he was struck on the head by a can of sauerkraut that fell off.
Sorry.
A small table then moved through the living room to a small landing at the top of the staircase and then threw itself down the steps. At the other end of the house at this exact same time, there was a stack of firewood that again was in the basement and exploded. So just picture if somebody was to put a little stick of dynamite or something in with the firewood, what that would look like. And they say that's exactly what happened.
Damn, that's crazy.
On January 19th, the paranormal activity picked back up after a full whole day of nothing happening. So it's the first time they had a break. Nothing happens for a day, and then it picks back up on the 18th. They were being thrown all over the house as far as objects. So there's, again, things just start falling and being thrown. Family members were running room to room trying to assess the damage. The next 4 days, the activity stopped again. But the end of that 4 days, at the end, it came back with a vengeance. Almost like it needed time to gather more energy or something in that 4 days where nothing was going on. There was a 9-hour barrage of breaking and flying objects. Mrs. Jones couldn't handle it anymore, so she ran from their home and ran to her sister's house. Edgar and his son, or son-in-law, were so frustrated that they started taking anything that was breakable in the house and throwing it in the yard just so they could get some sleep. They're like, we'll show you.
That's awesome.
So by the end of January, everything stopped. No rhyme or reason to it. But this time, word had already spread, and they were local celebrities. They were in the news. They were on television. So everybody knew what was going on. Newspapers and television reported that there was a constant presence in the house. And oddly enough, they were a constant presence because now every time you turned around, there was somebody from the news. They pushed the family to make a statement for their, obviously the listeners or the readers out there in that case. Most think the poltergeist activity was brought on by the 17-year-old grandson, Ted. He was a high school dropout, very shy, kept to himself. He loved to read science fiction and then was fascinated by the supernatural. He would go in the basement and write. He even did like a little newsletter that he would send out to friends and family, and it was typically on the occult.
Hmm.
His family hated that he
Interesting.
spent all this time on the supernatural, and they would tell him that they would prefer that he put his focus on schooling, which he had no interest in the world in doing. A lot of the people, as far as the media and stuff, felt like that this was all a hoax perpetrated by Ted. But that couldn't have been possible because there were things going on in multiple places in the house at the exact same time. So that wouldn't have been physically possible. As you touched on earlier, most people believe when it comes to paranormal activity, poltergeist activity, I should say, it's brought on as a telekinesis type thing, usually by a teen going through puberty, going through a really rough time. Most of the time, it's a teenage girl, such as
Usually,
the
yeah.
Bell Witch situation. We covered an Indiana poltergeist case one time where it was actually an elderly woman. She was like in her 60s. I know we covered that at our live show in Indianapolis at one point. But in this case, it's a 17-year-old boy. But with him catching all kinds of grief from his parents and from his grandparents about what he's doing and being interested in the supernatural and the occult anyway, going through a lot of stress and emotions, it makes sense that maybe he was the source of everything that was going on.
Interesting.
They had experts come out. They were trying to find a logical choice. They brought out, checked out for tremors. They were looking for radio signals and waves, high pitch sound waves that could have been doing something. The police even looked for explosives in the objects that had exploded. Then nobody found anything that made sense. And the police to this day just say that it was something that they just don't have an answer for.
Hmm. That is interesting.
So
Kind of
there's
reminds me of the Donnie Decker case, the Rain Man
that's a
case, because
crazy
that was
story,
a
man.
guy. Yeah, that was a guy too. I remember coming on and telling you guys about that.
That
I
might have
did
been the
that
first time we had
episode.
you on was to tell the Donnie Decker case.
Yeah, I think it was because that one bothers me. That's one I have problems figuring that one out.
You know, and
Uh,
I've heard a couple other stories since then where it would rain inside of a house.
yeah,
Not, so he was the first one I'd ever heard, but he's not the last one that I heard. But
yeah, yeah.
that's a crazy story. Justin,
Unsolved
tell everybody how they
Mysteries
can
did a
listen to your
great.
podcast and follow you on social media.
Oh, well, you can Apple, Spotify, whatever, anywhere you can listen to podcasts. Just type in Mysterious Circumstances Podcast or my name. I'm sure it'll come up. Yeah, social media wise, you can just type in my name or podcast. You can follow me there. Instagram, Facebook, X. I am on Threads, but I really don't see a purpose in having like two Twitter type social medias. So I posted on there one time and that was about it. I was like, I don't need this. This is
I've never even opened
useless.
up an account just because, like I said, I got Twitter. I
It's
don't need both.
yeah, it's like automatically connected to Instagram because they got mad at X. So they're like, oh, we can just make our own different one. And it's just the same shit over and over. But yeah, other than that, I've been pretty quiet on the home front. I do have a YouTube channel and I just started uploading a few episodes in the last couple years. I actually have one video on there now from when I interviewed Rizwan Burke, who's a MIT scientist, and he's very into the multiverse and parallel dimensions and paranormal and UFO stuff. He's super smart
Wow.
guy, super awesome, hell of a nice guy. He was actually on Rogan about a month before I got him, so I was
Oh,
like,
Oh,
wow.
nice.
yeah,
Heck
yeah.
yeah.
He's it was a great interview. He's a really nice guy. So yeah, if you feel the need, if you're into that kind of stuff, yeah, simulated theory, whole simulated life. That's his specialty. He's written 2 books on it. So, but other than
Good
that,
for him.
yeah, I'm just chilling. Not really haven't put out too much content the last couple years. So
Yeah,
I don't
and
know.
if you're listening to us on Justin's feed, then we are Hillbilly Horror Stories. Same, find us anywhere. Just Google us, you'll find us.
Yeah, you guys are easier to find than me these days.
Yeah, just come to Daytona Beach.
Honestly, a Florida trip sounds fantastic, and I get a bunch of vacation time back in February.
Yeah,
So
we got a
Come
spare
on
room.
down. Yes, we do.
I will. I want to see some haunted attractions down there. I haven't really ventured around Florida
We'll
too
take you to
much.
Casadega.
Yeah.
All
We
right.
like that.
Is that pretty good?
Yeah, 30 minutes from my house. The whole town is nothing but psychics and mediums.
Shit,
Haunted
yes.
hotel.
Let's go. That's what I'm talking about.
All
Sounds
right,
That'd
really
guys.
cool.
We appreciate you listening to us. It was fun, and like I said, we'll be doing this again with some other friends of ours, podcasters, and like I said, it's going to be a blast. Thanks,
Thank you for
Justin, for
Thanks,
coming
having
on,
me.
buddy.
Justin.
Thanks for inviting me
We
on. I
miss you,
appreciate it.
of
I miss you
course. We
guys
all
too.
miss you. Thank you. And
All
come on
right.
down. We got a room for you.
Well, I tell you what, if I
Seriously.
do, we should just set up a show, man. I'll
Oh, that'd
spend a
be
whole week down
cool.
there if you guys were be interested in doing something like that.
Yep.
We'll
Come
cross that
on
bridge when we come
down.
to it. All right, later, guys.
Bye, honey.